The son of John made this column, made it for him a blessing. 5th century AD.
Thanks.
It fulfilled the prophecy. Second, the practicality. We can't dismiss the practical reasons behind things either. So we have both things put together. Matthew tells us in chapter 4 the fulfillment of Isaiah 9. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, towards the sea across the Jordan. Galilee of the Gentiles, the who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and those who sat in the region shadow of death, light has dawned. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, land of Herod Antipas, land of Herod Philippus, towards the sea, the Mediterranean of Israel. And having gone to war against them, they captured the Ark of the Covenant. But it brought them bad luck. They shifted it from one town to the other for 7 months, but still there was no joy. And so they decided to put it into a wagon, tied to 2 cows, with 5 sets of gifts representing the 5 major Philistine cities of Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. It was sent back to the field of Joshua of Beth-Shemesh. He broke open the wagon, sacrifices the 2 cows. He then has the ark taken from there by David by way of the Beth Chodon ascent to Kiryat Yearim or Kiryat Yearim. Remains the home of Abinadab for 20 years. From there, David took it on to Gibeon, to Jerusalem, for its permanent house under King Solomon. Plural. It is a square or rectangle block of building. They have 2 or 3 doors going in, and then a whole culmination of rooms inside. Could be 20 or 30 rooms. One insula is right there. Now don't you think all the excavation you're seeing in that...
She got you. She got you.
But the sounds of Galilee were, we are going to establish a new kingdom. This one will be a kingdom under God. I can just see these brawny fishermen saying, we're with you with swords in hand and knives. Some of the dagger men of Galilee, the Sakari. Peter, when he heard it was the Lord, was so confused about the whole situation. Having seen Jesus crucified in Jerusalem, we are able before mine enemies. If you will eat, it is an end of war and a time for peace. Laban tricking Jacob so many times for the marriage of Leah, the striped and spotted sheep. Before you leave my house, have a meal with me. Abraham, being at war, met by Melchizedek. In Genesis 14, he went out and offered him a meal covenant with bread and wine.
Peace be still, whether the wrath of the storm-tossed sea, or demons, or men, or whatever it be, no waters can swallow the ship where lies the Master of ocean and earth and stars. Let us sweetly obey thy will. Peace be still, peace be still. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace, peace be still.
The White Synagogue, built upon the remains of the Synagogue of Jesus. In Paul's house, that metal building, they're excavating, and they believe that's where Paul's house was, where Jesus killed his mother-in-law. The excavation that they're doing, because this synagogue that Jesus visited was not the one we're standing on, but the one down here.
Excavated site anywhere in Israel. And excavations so far have turned up over 5,000 gold coins. This was a rich city. And I remind you of the little widow that wanted to give 2 copper knives. She gave up all that she had, let alone a gold coin. So Zebedee's sons, partners, and servants was probably a very good industry. I'm not surprised people kept going back to it.
Where?
From
This
the
is
sea.
a very, this
From
is
the
a very,
Sea of Galilee.
there we go.
Beautiful specimen.
Was it just calling?
This is on the Sea of Galilee, and there's a fishing boat. They're pulling the nets in, and there is another boat just sitting.
Able to see the site of the Sermon on the Mount where we were. This really is right at the base. What we have here is a Byzantine baptismal font where you sat in the transept in the arms of the cross.
This is on the door of the church where they say is the location where Jesus fed the 5,000. That's where he's feeding. That picture I just showed you a minute ago of the lake, it looks really similar to that, where he was on the boat. 12 lights represent the 12 apostles, or rather disciples. This is the basket with the bread. Obviously there's one on
You see the small doors at the bottom? That's for the animals. So there's a high wall surrounded around by chalkstone. I wonder if the people over there by the palm trees are John was the people of Israel. They're living in the nicer houses. Some of them still live in the older ones. Notice the woman on the left, how she's carrying a baby on her shoulder, not in her arms. We're all taught of
the tribe of
Ishmael.
Ishmael. This valley right here is where the tribe of Ishmael.
That was a double no-no. And that's why the Jews wanted nothing to do with them, because Ishmael was a sore thumb. Up in just a few moments to get something to eat with some interesting salads, such as the white lemonade, which is like a very creamy sort of white cheese. Made in this cup by then, when you hear the long blast of the ram's horn, all the people will raise a great shout and all the city will come down. It must have been a great shout. Could you imagine the 13 rounds around Jericho for 1 week and not a single word was uttered? The almighty shout that went from the women when they heard the ram's horn, that it would have knocked down any. Joshua is our first military officer, running his army by bugle. So from the now 3 days. He got the king of Ai, the king of Bethel. He gets over to Gibeon where he was tricked by the They tricked Joshua as the sun stood still over Gibeon and the moon stayed in the valley of Akron. There's never been a day so long since he took his vengeance over the ministers too. And so this has become known as the Mount of Temptation, or Karantal, the Mount of the 40.
Mount of Temptation.
First and third temptation. So with that, let's go and stand in the shade for a minute to overlook the oasis area. That there's beards that have been half shaven off should be fully grown, that they should not look a disgrace to the children of Israel. We're told to remain in Jericho. Along comes Hiel of Bethel. Bethel is further back across the mountain. It's the split between Abraham and Lot. Jacob's dream when he saw the ladder ascending to heaven with the angels ascending and descending. The seat of the government of the northern kingdom. The place where the priests were brought back, being brought in back from the area of Babylon to help the northern kingdom. And he wants to rebuild Jericho, but he is forewarned by Elijah not to rebuild. If he does, there will be a drought in the land. He even spoke with Ahab on the subject, but the city was rebuilt, and we are told at the expense of the firstborn and the youngest son in 1 Kings 16. That removes the curse laid by Joshua, but now another curse of a drought, which led us to the contest on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings 18. 2 Kings then opens with the death of Elijah. Elijah is going from Gilgal to Bethel, back to the Jordan with his disciple Elisha. He keeps telling Elisha, stay back, don't come with me. Elijah, however, removes his mantle, he strikes the waters of the Jordan, and recrosses to the other side on dry land, as Joshua crossed on this side on dry land. It is from here that he is taken up in a whirlwind, and drops his mantle to Elisha. And so it was to Elisha that the men of the city came and said, behold, the situation of the city is pleasant, as my Lord sees. Where the water is bad, the land is unfruitful. He said, bring me a new bowl and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. He went to the spring of water, threw the salt in, and said, thus says the Lord, I have made this water wholesome. Henceforth neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it. So the water has been wholesome to this day, according to the word that Elisha spoke. The spring of Elisha, today tapped by United Nations, is under the blue doors just below us. That one single spring feeds all of this oasis. Tankers come through, fill up with water to outlying districts. There is such an abundance of water, and yet it is the first time I've heard of anyone throwing salt into water to make it drinkable. The saltiest in the world, the Dead Sea, the Eastern Sea, the Furthest Sea, the Asphalt Sea, the Sea of Lot, for some of the names it's been called in history. The capital city of Perea is Philadelphia. Old Testament Rabat Ammon, present day Amman, the capital of Jordan.
A nice reminder of Zacchaeus wanting to see Jesus pass that way. So the only sycamores that we have here in Jericho today are right here. And a little while ago there was an ecumenical council meeting when we were trying to decide who was the smallest man in the Bible. And one minister said it's probably Samson, so known for his strength. Another said no it wasn't, it was Zacchaeus. We're told he's a man of smaller stature. Another said, but you've forgotten all about Nehemiah. So if you're going for Nehemiah, when was the last time you read the book of Job about the shoe height?
We come here during the winter because during the winter it would snow in Jerusalem sometimes. So this is where I live. They're just digging it out right now. Isn't that amazing? Jericho.
I shall need to lie down in it. He will lead you beside still waters, not these running waters as aqueduct below us, but he will lead beside still waters. Running water means fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Do you know what he's talking about, the valley of the shadow of death? This is where David was a shepherd boy. What's he talking about? Look to the right.
Oh God.
That is the valley of the shadow of death, where the sun never reaches the bottom of the valley. How do we get across it? By my rod and my staff. Now anoint my head with oil, and we've slipped and tripped over all of these hills. In the evening time, we make a little basin. We'll all put our heads in it at the same time, that our cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David in Psalm 23 is simply
Kidding. This is unreal.
Right up here and I'll pull your arm around your waist and hold you tight.
Yeah, this is, I tell you, I got it right here. I'm holding on to this chair. Not that I don't trust you or anything. Built by King Herod.
Hey, we're still staying on a Roman road. You will find pieces of buildings, such as over here to the right. There are other pieces of aqueducts catching. All of our wind and rain is coming from the northwest, and so the slope that is facing northwest will have the most vegetation. The sun rises behind us, goes down ahead of us, stays on our left side over the equator. So it bakes hard. Those are not black sheep of the family, those are goats. But we'll also keep our eyes open, we'll probably see some sheep in the wilderness, because this is the major area where David was a shepherd boy. Now look very carefully, way up there in the west, can you see a city set upon a hill that cannot be hid?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can see the tops of the buildings, despite the fact that we're quite hazy today because of sand. Another town similar to that one is called Anata. It is further north than Jerusalem, and it's from there where the spring water is coming from. So Herod has brought it down for miles through the wilderness. But here with a little water, look how green it's turning, as it drops down to a lower aqueduct and joins with one on our side, which is what we saw earlier. My shepherd I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures because he knows where they are. He leads me beside still waters. He knows where they are. I won't drink from running water. That's a flash flood. So if I lose sight of my shepherd, I won't have what to eat. But over the years of wandering, he's eaten up nearly everything and turned the whole site barren. But he's wandering right on the edge of the valley.
The names of the characters involved. The one that does give us the name of the characters is John in chapter 12. At the home of Simon the leper, where Jesus' head is being anointed with pure nard, it was Mary so doing, washing or wiping his feet beforehand before burial, and will always be told in the memory of her. As for the poor, you'll always have them with you. You won't always have me. Well, after his resurrection of John 11. That is actually down the east side of the Mount of Olives, where Luke points out was the site of the ascension. He says it was at Bethany. So I'm not surprised that with the rising of Lazarus that Jesus called him by name. For if not, when we see the other side of the Mount of Olives, we'll see how many tombs are there.
The Lord surrounds his people. We're going to perform the ceremony of Abraham and Melchizedek. First started 4,000 years ago. 1,000 years before David made this the capital. It always is and will be the capital of Israel. Tomorrow it will be the capital of the world. So as we look towards the holy city, we'll be saying the traditional blessing. First in Hebrew, Yoav will give them in Hebrew. I'll repeat them for you in English. This is not communion. You'll be taking wine and bread, but our wine is not fermented. It is pure grape juice with nothing else added, no water or anything. It's pure grape juice. So do not have any fear. It is the fruit of the vine.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו הזמן הזה.
Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us salvation and preserved us, and has brought us to this season, that we can enter into your holy city.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן.
Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has brought forth the fruit of the vine, and we are the fruit of the vine.
What's coming into me is the awesome flowing waters I yearn for you, Lord my God, Psalm 42. On the columns, the four gospel accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. The bronze doors, the four faces of Ezekiel. Above it to the right, the golden onion dome church of Mary Magdalene, Mary from Magdal on the shores of Galilee. The lower sloping and hell. Notice the whitewashed sepulchres coming down. Right at the base where the conical top is the tomb of Absalom, the wicked son of King David, who had grave robbers. Notice the hole through the side of it. Behind Absalom into the rock is King Jehoshaphat. To the right with a column, St. James or B'nai Hazir. The square pointed tomb is the one of Zechariah, possibly the father of John, possibly Zechariah's third in Matthew 23. On white buses, it goes down to the left. Where those two meet is the city of David, down here in the base. The city expands, is Mount Zion to the slopes of the north. It's going northwards. So it expands, and all the houses below you date from the days of David and Solomon that have been dug out. Davidic and Solomonic houses. It expanded further to the north with the assumption of the temple, and then another valley sticking out like my thumb, almost at right angles, going all the way around is Gehenna. Gay Ben Hinnom, the valley of the son of Hinnom. And that goes around us. Now looking up, the 15 Psalms of Ascension, and in the Hebrew, the rhythm is a long line, two short lines. A long line, two short lines. And they are called the Psalms of Ascension. It's the ascent into the temple, and the steps you are looking at are from the days of Jesus in the New Testament. Notice the wall joins on right through the middle of a gateway on the left. Can you see it? See the top of the gate there? It is one of the Huldah gates. To the right is a triple gate that's been stoned in, which is the second Huldah gate. The Talmud says you must enter by the right, where there's only a small line of steps. But leaving from the left, if you are not a Jew, you are not allowed in. Neither were you allowed in if you had not been to the ritual bathing of the mikveh, the origins of baptism. And these were probably the tokens that you've been to your ritual bathing, that you gave to the God that allowed you into the temple. And they date from 2,000 years ago. Back to the right is a corner down into the valley of God's judgment. That is the largest corner of the building of Jerusalem. The word for a corner in Hebrew is the word pinah. That is the pinnacle, the pinnacle of the temple.
Up to the southeast. Therefore I'm going to throw my garbage out of this gate, which is why it's called the dung gate or the garbage gate. Very simple, very European valley, meaning the valley of the cheesemakers. You've never been to a cheese farm, it stinks. Therefore, it is downwind.
The Mount of Olives.
After 1967 and the Six-Day War, when we came back into the old city that was born on the 28th of May 1948 to the armies of Abdullah Tel and the Jordanian Legion, we found many of our buildings badly damaged. We started to rebuild. We're going to money changes. You probably can bring from America all your sheep and goats for sacrifices. So what are you going to do? We're going to those buying and selling. Where it says number 2 to the right, when the Muslims claimed that that wall would collapse, we wanted to keep them happy. So we put in those concrete pillars to hold up this wall. Do you think it's really going to hold up that wall? Where the stones weigh 200 to 400 tons apiece, and there are 3 building stones, one inside the other. It is not vertical, it all leans in towards the temple. It's trapezoid. And you know when you stand on a tall wall and you look up, it's going to fall on you? The temple will never feel that it will fall on you.
Entering the old city of Jerusalem, and they're checking the bags to make sure there's nothing inside.
Prayed fervently to God to save them and redeem them from the tyranny of the Crusaders. What could the Crusaders hear? The sounds of wailing. So they called it the Wailing Wall. What we call the Wailing Wall is the local tax office. That's what we do all the morning. Wipe your hand down the wall, it is wet. Because it is trying for the day that the temple will be rebuilt. For I tell you, these people were silent. The very stones would cry out. And the stones have been crying out. But the time of the Gentiles will be done when Jerusalem is rebuilt. And we are seeing the rebuilding of Jerusalem today. Now, as much as you can see of the wall, there is the same amount again below ground.
We're putting these papers on the wall which will never be taken out. And these are messages to God. It's wonderful to see those who believe so strongly. I stood next to that lady. The ladies have to be on this side, women's side of the Wailing Wall. And this is the men's side. There's another archway in there. It's supposed to be beautiful. Unfortunately, we can't see it as women anyway. The Jews, Muslim, and Christianity.
The first time that you can hear the bells, the muezzin of the Muslims and the Jewish prayer all at the same time. Under the Crusaders it was Christian, and the Byzantines was Christian, and Islam it was Islamic, under the Temple it was Jewish. Today, the Jews, Muslims and Christians all have their shrines honored at the same time. It is the closest to an international city it has ever been. Jew, Muslim and Christian sat at the same table at the same time.
Just came outside of the gun wall. This is wonderful. It's the entrance to the BYU Center. This is the barbecue that we're having at our hotel. It's the night of the 16th, and we just got here to Jerusalem. We just got done singing at the BYU Center. What did you get me?
Okay. I have some chicken and some beef.
What have they got
and I
here
skipped the
anymore?
hot dog. He didn't want a hot dog.
This is the buffet. We're having a barbecue outside by the pool.
There are Gail's plates.
Rewind it.
Huh?
Rewind it?
I want to rewind it and look what I just did. Really fast.
Why?
Just to see what it did. So I push that?
Let me show it to you later because it's a pain to do it. You have to go back to this section again.
Can I go back a little ways?
It's hard to do that. Then you have to find your spot again and watch it. Don't do my food anymore.
I'm not. I'm going up to you now. And here's Gail. Let's get a little closer up here. There we go. She is eating her food. What is that you just put in your mouth?
You want to see it?
Oh, I don't know if we want to be that disgusting. Okay, we'll pan on over to Allison, Gail's roommate. Let's look at what she is eating. Is that a potato, Allison?
Yes, very good potato.
She's enjoying her meal. We'll look at Gail's potato. If we can find it. There we go. There's Gail's potato.
So this is one we've been talking about, whether John was actually eating this or was he eating the insect locust. We said we cannot say definitely because John was a Levite, so his father Zechariah was a priest, so we don't know definitely whether he was or was not. The Levites were permitted to eat the insect locust. Now when it's dry you eat the pod but you don't eat the seed. Here's one of the seeds. I picked it up off the ground in my hand. What I'd like to know is how much does it weigh? I do not weigh it in pounds and ounces. I do not weigh it in grams or kilograms. And this is 1 carat. Right. It's 1 carat. Gold, silver, diamonds are weighed in carats. The Bible calls it a gerah. G-E-R-A-H, of which there are 20 gerah to a shekel. Remember, we use all sorts of weird sort of measurements. For example, that is an inch. We measure horses in hands. That is a cubit from the tip of the finger to the elbow. You measure in feet. Whose foot are you measuring?
Not mine.
Well, not sure. Edward I of Great Britain's foot is 1 foot. He's buried in Westminster Abbey. That's Edward I of England. And when you're striding down the road, stop for a minute and look between your feet, and the distance is 1 foot. 3 feet make a stride, stadia, or a yard. None of them. They are all non-Jews. Some of the more famous ones, such as people like you might have heard of, Wallenberg, a Swedish diplomat marching into the Nazi headquarters, demanding the release of large numbers of Jews who claimed to take them for death and
That was brought in
destruction
from Norway.
The King of Denmark was ordered to hand over all the Jews. He also was told that the Jews must be identified by wearing a yellow Star of David. He did not feel that he could stop the Nazis, and he ordered that all Jews must wear the yellow Star of David on their arm. And so must everyone else. He himself wore a yellow Star of David, and because of it, the Nazis did not know who was who. Result, in Denmark, only 50 people died owing to the Holocaust from the Jewish nation that was there. Those that were fishing, and those are all areas of fishing out there, we don't understand. After all, these are our friends, these are people we fish with, and they took their boats and sailed, skipping between Norway, Sweden and Denmark, over the seas in boats just like that one.
Succeeded in frustrating Nazi Germany's intentions of deporting Denmark's 8,000 Jews to death camps to the east. The deportations were to be part of the final solution for the destruction of European Jewry. Was set in Denmark for the 1st of October of 1943. A courageous rescue operation was carried out by the members of the Danish underground, which assisted 7,200 Jews to escape in Sweden. This boat smuggled Jews from the coast of Denmark near the town Kjellege to waiting fishing boats at the sea continue their journey to Sweden. The boat has been placed here to commemorate the 40th anniversary dedicated to
quite
Warsaw.
well in the area of Warsaw. There's a lot of business that was going on in Warsaw until the Nazis marched on the town, forcing the Jews into be one corner of the town. Well, after the fall of the Jerusalem temple, Jews being taken back to places like Italy, to Rome, had taken with them, some of them, their new trades to Italy, which was an old trade out here.
We only have 30 minutes here, so it's going to be really fast. The pictures and the accounts are just awful to look at. It's very similar to Dachau, but it's on a much larger scale. It's really hard to look at. I assume these are the Jewish passports. This is the memorial for the children that we're going into. And it's supposed to be completely dark in there with 1.5 million candles to represent.
Out in her milk, that I shouldn't do it to a calf and a cow.
It's talking about
Therefore,
Pharisees.
logic says, don't eat milk and meat together at all. As I build a fence around the law, and so there's an interpretation. They believed in resurrection and held the power of the people. The Sadducees said, and they held the power of the priesthood. They were the aristocracy. Partly also Roman influence in a lifestyle. They liked a little money on the side, the Sadducees. The aristocracy of the period, they said, as the law is written, so I obey the letter of the law. And if it says I should not boil a kid in his mother's milk, it says nothing about the calf and the cow. Now they said there was no resurrection. And that's probably why they were Sadducees. Then there was a third group called the Essenes that believed in the Jerusalem temple. But they didn't know how to get over the problems of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they have gone off into the desert to set up their own community. Believing the Messiah was on their doorstep, so why marry? And they are authors of what we're going to see in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovered in 1947, when two young Bedouin boys coming from the hills of Moab had lost one of their sheep. It already said that Matthew says, a man has 100 sheep and loses one, does he not leave?
Oh, it's on. Oh.
It's on. Oh. There is the old city of Jerusalem in the far background. See the dome? That's the old city of Jerusalem. To the right. Right behind us. Look real far up there. It's a big white news center up in the center. It's a pretty view. And it's June 17th. It's a Friday. Yeah, their Sabbath starts at 5 o'clock today. And the food was expensive. Very expensive.
Very expensive.
Turn around and look at where we ate. Barbara, Nancy?
Oh, hey, I thought you were Lorraine. Here, I'm just about to message.
Oh, I'm
Rain.
so sorry.
Come on, dear.
This is in the garden. Hollyhock?
Will you help me so that we're getting...
Yes, we will.
Go right across in the shade, folks. Mind the ground here is very uneven at the bottom of the steps, folks. Be careful, will you?
These grounds are just beautiful.
Therefore, we try to fit in with the guys because they do a tremendous job for you, don't they?
Yes.
And therefore, we like to sort of work in with them as much as we can. Normally, we finish at the tomb because obviously the tomb is the highlight of our story. But I'm quite happy to go in reverse. From my point of view, it's all right. But as I say, from your point of view, you start with the climax and work downwards or something like that. But as long as you understand why, I think that'll be all right. There are three places we look at. One is a place that could be Calvary. You'll remember that Jesus went to Golgotha from the city for execution, the place called Calvary. Then the Bible says that he was taken to a tomb that was in a garden, and we try to demonstrate that there was a garden here at the time of the crucifixion. And then we come to the tomb. And when we come to the tomb, the things that we look at here are, first of all, what the Bible says, what the New Testament says. And it says three things that we can actually look for. It says, first of all, that the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea was cut out of the solid rock. Well, obviously this one was cut out of the solid rock. When the tomb was found, it was underground, and the front part had fallen out, and therefore the blocks had to be put in by the previous owner simply to re-enclose the tomb. By the time that the Garden Tomb Association was formed in 1894, the blocks were already there. Then the second thing we can look for is some evidence that we've got a rich man's tomb, because the Bible says that Joseph of Arimathea was a rich man, and member of the Jewish council, and a secret believer. Well, of course, anybody who could afford to have a rock-cut tomb would have been a rich person. But this is particularly a rich person's tomb because, as well as the grave area, which is on the right of the door, there is on the left of the door a room about 9 foot square, which is called a weeping chamber, where relatives could mourn for the person who had died. So we have a rock-cut tomb and we have a rich man's tomb. And then the Bible mentions a rolling stone. The Bible says that when Jesus' body was put into the tomb, a great stone was rolled in front. Now the stone would have looked rather like that circular disc over there, but it would have been much bigger. That one came from Ramallah, and the one from here would have to cover the whole doorway up to as high as my shoulder here. So therefore it would be considerably bigger than that in diameter and thicker. And then the Bible says that the tomb was new at the time of Christ, and strangely enough only one tomb in that area has been used out of the 3. There's only one that the archaeologists reckon was used at the time we're talking about, and that was the one on the far wall. 3 of them we can link in with very easily. Apart from that, there is on the outside of the...
Probably in the family, probably the wife, children, Joseph. Wouldn't you think? Evidently they put a stone there too. It's not a very big case. He is not here, March 16:6.
Without hurry, huh?
It was directly across there.
Who was the son of General Dobbs, and he was here for many years.
And they say this is perhaps Calgary. This is where President Kimball came and felt the spirit and thought perhaps yes, this was there. When they first bought this land, it didn't have all these beautiful gardens, so they planted. They used it to Yosemite here. It's his holy place. Here Jesus began his path.
But he came out and went as his custom was to the Mount of Olives. He didn't come once or twice. He came as his custom was. And his disciples followed him. When he came to pray, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." John's description, how Peter, furious with the whole affair, removed it.
This is an old... These beautiful iron gates. This is inside the church. It's a graveyard up there. I would love to go visit that. And the east gate is up there. It's sealed. O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Matthew 26:39. It's beautiful. In the pita bread.
We're standing almost the 21st century, and you're looking down the railings to going back about 2,000 years to the period of the Romans and their main street going through Jerusalem. It is all found because of a map that was discovered in Jordan. Zion Gate. There's the Zion Gate. Right inside this church down here, which is the Naya Church, has been found. It is 100 yards long. Today there's a block of apartments sitting on top of it.
In Jordan. And they're down at the Wailing Wall frame right now.
Without disturbing too much of your view, wherever you are, if you can try and take a look at the map, I'll show you exactly where we are, what we're doing, and where we're going.
Okay, that is
We came underneath the closed eastern gate, that's the area of the temple. We've cut over the line of the city of David, which today is outside the city wall. There.
They believe that this is where Solomon's temple was and his house.
The temple of Solomon.
What was the name of this temple?
Dome of the Rock?
That's beautiful. At this Muslim temple where we had to remove our shoes, no handbags, and you can't even hold hands in there. There's really pretty, very unusual Persian rugs. Not Persian rugs, Iran, is that Persia? Iranian rugs on the floor. And to the side were rugs from Saudi Arabia. They said if you say a prayer here, if all of us bowed our heads in prayers, that the Muslims would come running over in just a couple seconds.
And evil. Okay, so you should know now that your souls have been weighed, which is called the prophecy of the pit in Islam. It's interesting and rightly experimental though. When Abdul Malik ibn Marwan started his building, after letting his forces the spring, it was King Saul. Zachariah was not dumbfounded the whole time he doubted he's going to be born, only 60 days. And states categorically, in the third chapter, the house of Imran, verse 60, that Abraham was
To catch the rainwater.
We're on our way down to look at the road Jesus walked on.
Century AD, the Byzantine. And over here, our pottery vessels date from the Middle Bronze Ages, 2300 to 1900 BC. Jars found during the excavations of the site believed to be dated to the 1st century AD, and variety of pottery found during the excavations of the site.
Means if you went down that line, you were committed to death. That was your death sentence. But we cannot execute in the fortress for our deterrent. And so far in Jerusalem, we have only found one crucified man. He was crucified to an olive tree. The nails showed through his wrist and not his palm. His right foot was pinned to his left foot and doubled up to the left side. Somebody has taken a rod and smashed him across the knees. We can see the break on the right knee where the right knee has crushed the left knee. Remember, that's what they did to the two thieves to quicken their death, that the body would drop and you die of strangulation. However, there was an olive tree, there is still a piece of olive wood on the nails when they buried him. That's how we know it was an olive tree. Very things here. The 14 stations of the cross, the traditional 14, is from the opening chapter of Matthew, with the genealogies, and the 3 sets of 14 generations. Abraham to David. There is a very deep pool, where the Romans latched on to the idea that there were legends about the pool if you could get into it. 10, 7. That if you could get into it in time, that you could be cured. And they built over the top, the Roman temple to the god Asclepi or Asclepius, who is the Roman god of healing. His emblem was that of a stick with a snake going up the side of it. Who's the first one to use the emblem? Moses. All who looked upon the serpent were to be healed, and doctors are using the same emblem today. So much of the Greek and the Roman mythologies were actually coming out of here. Who is the Greek god of this? But we also have here the most perfect Crusader church left in the country.
Byzantine.
The Church of St. Anne's. Do you remember looking at St. George's? We spoke of the legend of Anne and Joachim wanting a child, and Joachim going off into the desert to fast for 40 days, and came back to find Anna by the pool of Bethesda. They had a daughter whose name is Mary, who's the mother of Jesus. This is the church to Saint Anne.
For rebounds.
I really don't know because I'm really not into that scene.
Well, I know, but I thought somebody told
I'm really not. Here at the grave 2,000 years ago, and some of this larger stone that you can see behind you. That's around the tomb of David. Above it we see smaller stone with a grave pointing, which leads to the area of the upper room. Senegal Synaculum, room of the last. Because this is kings of kings only to be buried in their own cities, as you read in the Bible.
Where King David's bone.
From this upper room, we're going to descend back to our chariot.
Agree that this is the site where Jesus and his disciples had the Last Supper. This isn't the exact building because this is 1,000 years too late. It was built by centurions. But on this side, in this location somewhere, is where...
But if you lose sight of your shepherd, you'll miss the green pastures, you'll miss the still waters, you'll stumble in the valley of the shadow of death, you'll be in trouble with the lion of Judah, the fox, the bear, as I lay a table before mine enemies. And the evening time, if I follow my shepherd, we'll all dive our heads in the pool to get a good drink. And if we all did that at the same time, our cup overflows. So surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, provided you keep your eyes on your shepherd. If not, you'll end up down here like Bishop Pike, that took over 1 week for the Israeli army to find him. But this is full of shepherds. Little shepherds' caves. When in the winter time we're going to have some rain, we're right on the edge of the Judean wilderness. It'll soak down through the earth. The sun will come out and draw the water out by capillary action, and it's turned this upper stone, a very hard stone that is called Nari.
These columns obviously weren't here, but this is where the ceremony... We're overlooking the shepherds. You said there's shepherds down there right now, although I don't see any.
I don't either.
Red dot showing?
Wait a second, Gail. Now, show me. Put my finger right on the button. I'm going to push it.
Push it and see if you see a red thing in there. Do you see red?
Go over there.
Where's
I see red right below.
Allison! Do you do? Okay, turn it off then.
Allison! Oh,
hurry!
No,
Me?
No, well, wait. Gail, maybe I don't. It's still on.
Okay, hit the button again.
This one?
Yeah.
It didn't go off?
Have to do in the army. A photograph of the tourist.
Wait. When these girls are done, I will tell him I've joined the Israeli.
Five for $10. It's done though.
Nativity. Nativity's birth. Church of the birth of Christ.
And the oldest church in the world.
Oldest church building.
Oldest church building.
Notice I tried to be very clear and understandable between what is a mosque, what is a temple, what is a church, what is a synagogue. Because let's face it, where we were today in the upper room would actually be the first church. It's the first time the disciples collected to receive return the Spirit of Jesus. So they are the church. Now, why was he therefore so depicted in these early icons? Well, somebody once sent me a letter, and they claimed this was a letter originally written in Aramaic on stone, and was the letter of Lentulus Publius to Tiberius Caesar, written in Aramaic. So I said, well, thank you very much for the letter, but where is the excavated city where it was found? Where can I find a copy of the Aramaic? Questioning, why would a Roman publish? Christos is a title, it is not a name. His name was Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus the Christ. He had ruddy hair, was fair complected, and had church, the cruciform. This part here of origin, you would not have been allowed if you were not a member of the clergy, and people came in with their sheep and their goats and their cows, and there was a whole riffraff that opened.
Only the priest, yeah.
Giving presents of lights, plus the first of Russia, the other two large chandeliers, and the manger scene, which you know so well, is the area behind us. Okay, those are the two places, the birth scene and the manger scene.
Oh, wow.
So you come right way down inside.
This is the birth scene.
Try to imagine there are no wall hangings, there are no lanterns, we're in a natural cave. This is only 1/5. The open area of the cave would have been the area behind us. Where I'm standing in front of you is a 14-pointed star. Who stole the original star, put it here in place, to up into an argument between the east and the west. The result. Down by his feet is a great philosopher of death. You see a skull. He has the voltage in his hand. Behind will be St. Paula. And then see these four characters again on the bronze doors. And around Jerome, his most favorite flower named after him, which is a geranium.
Heaven looked down where he lay. Thou lives, O Lord Jesus. Asleep, the Lord alone.
Without body even.
That's what you amazed me down in the grocery store.
This is the chapel in which the Bible was translated into Latin. And there's a building about
The St. George restaurant just before the Manifold.
We've graded guides the last few days, and they would be pleased to hear from you. Are you ready, Rory? Shall we move over here? So there's about, how many we have? About, we'd like to meet you and to hear from you. You take the time out to hear, ready to eat? Yeah. Okay. Let's have, where's the right here? We'll ask Mayor Frey to join us here, and Bonnie and Lloyd, Jess, Arthur. We'd like you to move over here. You notice
I don't know how to even go that. Maybe. I will never feel the same after today. This has really been a really humbling experience for me. I will never feel the same about my country, my family, my town, our Christmas. Yes, we just cannot take anything for granted. When we stop and think that right on the roof at this moment there are Israeli soldiers protecting us while we're eating.
Do you know why those Israeli soldiers were out there that were having pictures
taken with you. They were there really protecting us. And there are Israeli soldiers on the roof and out in the courtyard. And they're protecting our group because there's always some group, terrorists, that might come in and cause some trouble. And they don't want any trouble. They want to keep the peace. And that's why they're here.
Is the food wonderful? Did you know there's Israeli guards on the roof watch tower, making sure everything's going okay. And there's some Arabs just standing there. We just had a really interesting meal. We just came out of the restaurant right around the corner there. Is the Bethlehem that everybody's so nervous about. This is Sunday, and I'm looking down on Mount Olives. We're trying to find a easy route there, and this is overlooking this old city of Jerusalem. It's a beautiful day. It's about 8 in the morning. We're getting ready to have our group picture taken and also to have a service. We just had a most touching and beautiful sacrament meeting in the Mount of Olives. But because of time, we're not going to have any time to walk around the Mount of Olives. Guess we'll just have to come back. So beautiful.
Nobody's buried inside the box, they're buried 6 feet under. Woe to
The Golden Gates were directly in front of the Holy of Holies, and the Holy of Holies in the temple was just north of the sacred rock. And so there is a small dome there in the center, which is just actually a canopy type from the big gold dome.
You go back into the hills, as opposed to being a complete hermit or in a monastery. You're somewhere in between those two societies. Or maybe it's the world's first kibbutz, the first collective farm of the desert. Not the building, which means they must have been two-story buildings. If everything you're looking at was dug out of the sand, it is not reconstructed. In an earth format of concrete were put on the top just to hold it down, the people coming through and sitting on the rock.
Right over there across the Dead Sea is Mount Nebo. Moses saw the promised land. Kind of hard to see through the hay.
You do not speak until you are spoken to. About the laws of the Essenes. So nobody spoke unless the head of the community started a conversation. But that was a good time for a discussion and not what your parents taught you, don't talk with your mouth full. There's probably hills to the meeting room where you came before the council, where you could or could not become a member. And of course we can just imagine there are long tables. Leonardo da Vinci asked everybody to step to one side like the Last Supper, where Jesus sits in the middle of the table to get to all the people around. Right next to it we find the area of the store of pottery, with some of the plastering still in situ, so-called simply because we found a lot of pottery there. No other particular reason for it. We're dealing here with a male celibate community. They did not bring women into the community until they realized that they were dwindling. The woman was then brought in for the pure purpose of reproduction only. There was no love, there was no marriage as such amongst the Essenes. They could see no point in marrying as they felt the Messiah was on their doorstep. So what was the point in marrying if we're all going to be eaten down by the air of the Dead Sea? But Muhammad ad-Din, the Bedouin boy that originally found them, Of course, we had our amateurs and our professionals on the scene almost immediately. First and foremost, our professionals. They were the Bedouins. They had the fastest feet in the Middle East, the Arab nomads. Came running down into the areas of the desert, hunting for scrolls, because they were worth good money from the archaeologists. On the other side here, there is a stone quarry. Quarrying stone locally, the hole wasn't wasted, the walls were plastered, and we have water systems. But by the time the zealots had come, however, you may think yourselves very clever in the States and eat what you can and can what you can't. But called the Room of the Columns because we also found a large number of pieces of columns, some of them still in situ. All the walls would have been plastered, and here's some of the plastering with fresco paintings on it. If you want to go and have a quick dip, there's a little pool behind you. Don't dive in head first, there's no water in it right now. But then we start to go into the building.
These are the baths. On the top of Masada, overlooking the Dead Sea here.
And we're looking at terrain down there. It looks like rivers in the desert by IP breathing.
Look at all the hats down there.
It's very nice here. So with just a little shading probably on the top and the wind circulating through the veranda, it was very nice and cool. Never mind inside the fortress, let the soldiers sweat their...
The Romans were building, but they put the Jews already entered Egypt and were in the Suez area that the Israelites occupied for about 6 years, and they've now returned to Egypt. And I'm looking out at the Mediterranean. It's just view of the Mediterranean. Lots of palm trees. It's very, very warm out there, 110 degrees. It's a great time.
The wind's probably blowing 30 miles an hour.
30 miles an hour? I look like this kid at still. Where a major battle was here between, I don't know who was fighting, Egyptians and Israel here in the desert. So there's tanks and such strewn around. And the battle was in 1973. Suez Canal. Pretty soon I'm going to have to stop filming because I've got to turn it off. Never know what he's saying. What did he say?
You can see we're viewing the Sphinx. You can see the pyramid behind. One to the right, and the smaller one. To the, I guess it's behind that mountain right there. And the larger one right there. Here's again the tombs that people want to be buried by. And there's the view of the Sphinx. There's Gail. Talking to the natives. Oh, he wants her to get onto the camel. Look, I wonder if she'll do it. No. There's the Sphinx.
You don't believe me? This is
The Sahara Desert. In restaurant to eat now, and this guy he's Muslim and he's praying to Muhammad.
Where these people are entering is where the robbers' entrance is, and that's where you can enter if you want to.
5,000 people built these pyramids.
On the inside of the pyramid are no decorations whatsoever. All right, there's absolutely nothing on the walls of the column.
Oh.
They're okay.
We're going in to see. This is part of the complex that was the entrance, the doorway.
Went across the skies, and then the sun was at its most powerful at midday, and they called him the sun god Ra. That's the sun at 12 or at midday. And then as the sun went down towards the west, he began to lose his strength, and he got older and weaker and older and weaker. And by the time he got to the west, the sun was a very old, weak god indeed. And then
Sun god rise on the far bank of the Nile. I shall see the east burning with a new flame. I am the faithful warden at the foot of his Lord. So faithful, so vigilant, so near him that he gave me his space for my own. I am a pharaoh's companion, and I am
heavens, sovereign of eternity.
But the name which has remained with me is that given to me by a Greek traveler, the father of history, Herodotus. So of Gizeh, over all its monuments of modest or fantastic height.
Pharaoh of the 4th dynasty, 4,500 years ago. Here is the great pyramid which he built to defend himself against death.
It too bears an inscription, Khephren is great. Yet, out of respect for his father Cheops, Khephren built his pyramid on a slightly smaller scale.
Complete this immense funeral site of Gizeh and make it one of the wonders of the world. Though smaller, the Pyramid of Mykerinos is perhaps the most impressive for being the culminating point of a vast design. Having built it, the workmen climbed down from its granite flanks and laying down their tools, looked up with wonderment.